Okay, everybody, this is Rick, and I'm going to set a timestamp in the chat. I'm doing another rehearsal of a presentation that I'm going to make in um, sometime in the next week. So, October 20, and I have to go and prepare and rehearse and just understand what I'm going to say and what the flow might be. But things are changing. There's a bit of flux. One of the things that I learned or one of the things that I'm changing is the book I'm going to use in this demonstration, in this class demonstration. Instead of converting a science fiction anthology like I had been doing the past few times, I'm going to convert a cookbook, and a cookbook that we find on Project Gutenberg. So we're not going to spend too much time um, we're not going to spend too much time on the 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 details of that change, but we are going to spend a lot of time converting this this cookbook. One of the things that's exciting me about this is that there's a little bit more content and a little bit more. Um, there's more opportunity to do some fancy HTML in here, and that's exciting. That's a draw for me. Um, I I do think that yeah, I do think that the cookbook will also will also be a little bit broader a topic than say science fiction. That said, we are going to pick a public domain cookbook. So this class is going to talk about what is an ebook and how do I make one. Uh, First of all, I made an ebook um, back in 2017, and it's a book that if I share my screen here, um, it's a book that is not a bestseller by any means. It's a book that um, sold exactly 9 times. So this class is not about how to sell your book and make lots of money by those increased royalties selling directly to customers. This class is about how do you go and make your own. And that was the goal when I made this book. I wanted to make a book that I could sell on Amazon. And whether or not people sold it was almost a secondary concern of mine. My concern was just to understand how to make an ebook. So again, this is the experience that I bring to this class, and I'm going to share with you the just what's involved with making an ebook. When I think about the inside of an ebook, it's kind of tied up with the whole concept of ebook readers. Here at this time that we're doing this talk, 2022, there was people. It's established that people will read books electronically. It's also been established that people will continue to read paper books. I've I would say like most regular readers, my reading has gone from no ebooks to probably 30-40% ebooks. I still like a physical book. I still go to the library and borrow books. I still go to a bookstore and buy books, but it's I'm also open and willing to read plenty of books electronically. on an ebook. There's nothing more, I guess, there's nothing more exciting to be on a vacation, for example, than than a ebook reader filled with like 20 books that I can pick from. And ebooks, because they are digital, they don't take any space, etc., etc. I don't need to go into the whys and wherefores of an ebook, but I do want to mention that there is this terrific video, brief history of ebooks and their e-readers, and I like this video. Um, if in the video, he has a set of slides, and what you see in this is a history of the devices that have shaped the world of ebooks and digital reading. I would argue that when Amazon jumped into everything in 2007, that's when really everything changed, and people began, I think, reading ebooks just way more with more frequency, and probably more compelling, thanks to Amazon and its digital marketplace, i.e., Kindle Direct Publishing (KDP). It's now there's an opportunity for people to create their own books, their own works, and get them for sale in front of people. The book we're going to make today will be a book that you can sell on the internet. There's a few conversions that we have to do at the end, which I'll get into, but the actual mechanics of making an ebook are what we will cover today. I think one of the things that I like too about his presentation is, um, I think if I can navigate this part, it's a little tricky to navigate, but he does mention the various ePub formats, various ebook formats. There's actually two formats. There's three listed here. He actually has one more here, a fourth format called PDF. Everybody knows what a PDF is. ePub is the one we're going to learn today, and ePub is the dominant format. It's an open format. You can apply digital rights management on it. I don't know anything about digital rights management, but from this slide, it's clear you can add to it. But also on this slide is the fact that Amazon devices, Kindles and Kindle Fires and whatever else they're named, those ebook readers use a different format. It's called a Mobi format, and they in fact have a different file extension, AZW, for the Amazon's own proprietary format. So that's what's inside an ebook. What we're going to do in this section is take a brief look at one, using some tools that I've downloaded to my Windows based computer, and I have this book here called Immediately Effective Instruction. I'm going to double click on this, and this will open up a book that is inside of a Windows-based e-reader called Aquil. Aquil. I'm still deciding how to pronounce this thing. This book, it's an ebook, so I don't need to belabor what an ebook is, but this ebook has a very basic table of contents, obviously there's some simple formatting here with a boldface, and there's also the ability in an ebook, of course, to add your own notes and bookmarks, things of that nature. But what is an ebook? What is that thing exactly? Well, as I mentioned in the slide, and I'll talk about this in more detail when we make our own. But an ebook is is a container that can of it's a container filled with XHTML and various media assets, images. You can even put, I think, little clips. But for the most part, the assets are images. By container, I mean that it's it's a enclosed it's an enclosed file that encloses other content. The easiest analogy, the easiest way to think of it is that it's a zip file. And in fact, there is a specification of this format here when there is a specification of the format to be used when we look at the packaging of a book. It's essentially a zip format that's being used. So to prove that to ourselves, we could take this ePub from this book, and if I use my zip tool, which is 7-zip, if I open this archive, you can see that it contains a bunch of XHTML files. We're going to get into that in a moment. It contains some CSS, and it also contains a few other files that suggest what they are. There's a cover, there's what looks like table of contents, and there's also a meta file here that describes what's inside of this container, and that's defined by the spec. But there's no need to get into the spec, and we're in fact going to use it when I rehearsed with ePub 2. When I wrote my ebook, it was from before ePub 3, but the you don't need to know this specification in any real detail beyond the fact that an ePub is a container, and it's a container full of XHTML and other media assets. What we're going to instead do is use a tool called Sigil to author our own ePub. Sigil is a Sigil is a ePub editor. It see right here. It allows you to. I'll actually make this be the bookmark. Sigil, instead of making it the download here. Sigil is a open source and therefore an open source ePub editor, which allows a multitude of features, many of which we'll look at today. But what I like about the tool is that it gives you access to the entire range of, of possibilities with regards to an ePub. There are other tools that allow you to export a document into an ePub format, but what I found, especially thinking about Apple Pages, you are to some extent locked into the format that is provided by those tools. What I'm showing here today is a way to separate your content with the actual authoring of the ebook itself. What we'll do next is take a look at this book inside of the tool, because Sigil is a tool that can access and modify ePub. It can also read uh, an existing book and an existing ePub. I'm going to ignore this prompt here, but what you see in the tool is simply the same layout that we saw a little bit in the zip file, but now you can double click on a file and take a look at what's inside. File has it looks a bit compressed as if to save space, but you can reformat it so you can examine what it looks like. It does, when you do that, it does introduce extra spacing here, and that may have to do with the styles or the way the kinds of tags that are being used. But we're just taking a quick tour of Sigil here. The other aspect of Sigil is that examine and you can examine and maneuver through a book using the table of contents that's generated. You can also come into here and examine the table of contents and even manipulate it. Again, in this class, I'm going to demonstrate creating our own ePub from scratch. So we'll end up having a document that looks roughly like this. So I'm going to close this document. Actually, what I'll do is I'll make a new one here, a new ePub 2. Actually, I'll just do a new default. Discard these changes, and you can see its default is 2.0. So uh, I wish, I think for the next rehearsal, I'm going to be prepared and know the difference between the thing I had in the last rehearsal, XHTML versus HTML, but also now ePub 3 versus ePub 2. So in our slides, we're going to now talk about the steps to do this. And in fact, from this point on, it's going to be a big, gigantic show and tell. I think my goal when I get near the time of doing this presentation, I'm going to have a, a fully finished YouTube that the actual construction of the ebook that we're going to do here. We're going to do it quite rapidly here in this class, but I'm going to have a little bit more of a longer, lengthier YouTube video. That's a goal. That's a stretch. That's a stretch goal. Let's make that a stretch goal. So what I'll do now is go and introduce you to the steps to make an EPUB, and then just make our own. The main thing, the first thing is to understand the quote key concepts. But everybody here, I'm hoping, is familiar with using a zip file, and as you can see, we're going to use a tool that really hides that from us. But we need to understand and know HTML. We don't need to really know too much about CSS, in fact, but that ends up being helpful when you're actually getting to the point of styling your ebook. But we we probably won't have time to fully style the ebook, but we will use a little bit of CSS to improve the layout just a little bit, and you can see what that is. I'm going to talk about the key concepts in a moment, but the second aspect of making an ebook is, of course, to have some content. You need to have you need to have some words. And the we're going to grab some words, we're going to obtain some content, and make it an ePub. We're going to go to a resource called Project Gutenberg, and I'll introduce that when we get to actually making the content. Once we have the content, we have to bring it into our tool, Sigil, and then we have to format and lay it out to some extent. There's a few aspects of writing an ePub that I'll go over in this section. Finally, we have to make a snazzy cover. Can't judge a book by its cover, but it's an important piece. It's an important thing. It's an important consideration. At the very least, I'll show you I'll show you the resource that I used to make the cover for my ebook, which I thought was a pretty all right cover. It's well, yeah, not wow. Where's the cover here? But as I said, we'll figure out how to make our own cover that is very basic. What I'll show you with regards to covers and um, so key concepts. Um, this is it, I'm hoping everybody in this class might be familiar with HTML. It's been around a long time. You're working at a high tech company. You if you've worked at other high tech companies, you probably have run into at least some occasion to want to be curious about it. And but HTML is a markup tool. It's a markup language. It's the hypertext markup language. That's its definition. And what you can see here is that using these tags, say for example title, you can declare that this thing has a specific title. This document right here, simple HTML. You can change it here. Hello, and it'll change the title. Now it won't change it here. I changed that title up here, but if this was a separate browser page, this would have a title, simple HTML and CSS. Hello. There's a section here called the body, which, as you might expect, is just all of this stuff right here. Then there's an HTML tag for the heading. So you have your text, which is here, and then you put a tag, you surround that text with tags. And the tags tell the browser how to display it. And if that gets you thinking a little bit, what that implies, of course, is that inside of ebook readers is essentially a browser, essentially a browser. It's a simpler one because it only has to display, I'm guessing, a subset of HTML. I don't really know, but since it's only displaying text, the kinds of HTML that we'll use will be very basic. We're going to use the P element to just delineate paragraphs. There's also different headings depending on the size that we want. And then finally, there's some lists that we can add. Unordered list and an ordered list. And even though I said we're not going to really deal with CSS, this is CSS right here, a relatively simple example. This says whenever you encounter the tag H2, style it so that the text align is in the center. Now, if I put this here, if I make this right, it will go to the right. If I make this left, it'll go to the left. There's a lot of other styles that you can put, including the one that proves that it's working. You could set a background, etc. This won't be something that we'll do in our ebook, but right there was a short introduction to HTML. a very short introduction to HTML. And as you have your own ePub projects going, you may find yourself trying to lay out some text, and it may you may have to learn other HTML tags to achieve the look that you want. But for our ebook, these tags here, H1, H2, P, list, those are the basic ones that we're going to be using. I'm going to reset this for the next time. I wonder if I can go back to the previous. Nope. So I'm going to save this. For the next rehearsal, I'll try not to mention this about the title. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So what we're going to do now is write and obtain some content. Now, here's the part where we can all go around the room and learn each other's goals with regards to writing an ebook. But that that would be more of a social gathering. I think anybody who's let's put it this way. I think writing a book is one of is a it's a common goal for people. With the tools that we're going to learn today, you can in fact write your book and not worry about, okay, now I have to go and get it to a publisher. There's none of that now. I think the publishing world has really opened up, and this isn't a talk to go over that. That would have been a quite interesting talk, I think. But we're only going to talk about how to make our own ebook. But in order to do that, we have to write it, which I'm not going to talk about. But we also have to get that content somehow, though. Either we write it or we get it. I'm proposing that you would use something like Microsoft Word or Apple Pages to generate your content, because it is possible to write. And I can go in here and say, this is the start of my great novel. But the putting in these tags it can be a bit labor intensive. If you're not used to it might be odd to do it this way. So many people would rather write inside of a WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get type editor, and then generate an ePub using that editor, or generate HTML using that editor. So once we have our content, then we have to format it and make a cover. So let's talk about this content. The theme of the theme of the hackathon that we're doing is cooking, and I found this old cookbook from Project Gutenberg. Now, Project Gutenberg, it's basically a library full of eBooks. The books in here are books for which the copyright has expired, so there's no problem to use this content in any way. In fact, there is an ePub available for this book, and we can download it here. And I'll have to go and look at that later. But what we'll do is we'll actually get this book and generate our own ebook using this content. This is I've skimmed through this, and my wife is she's a fantastic cook. She also works for a company that indexes recipes. She looked at this and said, these are not recipes, but in fact, they are descriptions of recipes, but then towards the a traditional recipe here. So we're going to take this content and get it into Sigil. Now, the easiest way to do this is to get the HTML already, and it turns out that, well, it's on a web page, and if you view the source, you can see that there's actually HTML all over the place. So we're just going to save this as an HTML file and bring that into Sigil. But I want to point out that the tool Sigil does let you bring in text in other Microsoft Word documents, which I've tested out and works quite well. There's also a format to bring in text importer. These are plugins that you can bring into Sigil, and I have them here in my manage plugins. And there may be other plugins here. There's you can see here there's about 75 plugins that may be helpful to whatever ePub work that you're going to be doing. But we're doing it the slightly easy way because we're going to just save this content using HTML. How do I do that? Just do a little save as with a web page HTML only, and I'm just going to put in here. Here I actually had it from before, but it's going to be something like that. I'm just going to save this. Now I'm just going to do a quick check to see that these two files are roughly the same file. It's 240 kilobytes, and this is also 240 kilobytes. And I think if I were to do a difference between the two, they're going to be the same document. Okay, good. Now, to bring this, so for my next rehearsal, I'm not going to do that. For my next rehearsal, I'm just going to do a save of this as HTML. What we'll do is we'll add in an existing file. And voila, the book that we saw on the web page here is now available to us entirely inside of Sigil. See that this page, this preview, renders the content, and because it's already HTML, we don't have to worry about putting in the individual tags. But what we're going to do now is just clean up the document a little bit and then bring in some table of contents. We'll do a very simple style, maybe even bring in an image, because this book was written in 1919, and when was photography invented? 1826. I'm going to guess that this book did not have images because it's a book from that period where illustrations like you see in today's lavish cookbooks just was not possible back then. That's my guess, and I think for the next rehearsal, I'm just going to leave that part out. But now that we have this document in here, one of the things that we should do is just get rid of this first one. We don't need this thing anymore. We're just going to delete that. One of the very first things that we want to do is create our content so that it's broken up over many different pages. Just like a browser, which has a long HTML to to display a very big HTML file is not going to be helpful. It's going to potentially slow down the ebook reader. So we're going to break up this file into multiple different parts. So I'll show you what the process is for that. But maybe the big thing that we're also going to do, the big thing that I'm going to do, is just get rid of this part here, the Project Gutenberg boilerplate, which you can see is here at the top inside of these pre documents in this pre tag. Pre tag is a pre tag. I'm going to put here pre, and I'm going to make I'll make this, just grab this section, this little sentence here, and put that inside of a pre tag, and you can see that it will just display as a pre-formatted. It's going to display without a normal typeface. But we don't need that in our book, the Project Gutenberg, a boilerplate. This is a book that we're going to enjoy for our own personal use. And as a result, what I'll do is I will just get rid of that whole section just by deleting. That's all. And just like that, we now have a part of the book that looks a little better. At least you don't have that part. And there's also some boilerplate at the end, the Project Gutenberg, transcriber notes. Again, it's part of this pre-tag, and I'm going to scroll up. A lot of boilerplate here, in fact. I'm going to do something like this. There is this transcriber note here. All grave accents. Yeah, I'm thinking, how is this styled like this? But if we search for the trans note, we can see that there's a little bit of a style here in this what we call inline CSS. We're not going to have the we're going to omit this part out, and from there, our book now I guess looks the way that we wanted to, at least from a high level. Now I'm going to take a quick break, and then we're going to back, and I'm going to go and continue the rest of the presentation. What I'm going to show next is how to split up the document so that there's multiple XHTML files. The Sigil tool has the ability to generate a simple table of contents using this mechanism here, generate table of contents. And when you open it, what you find is that it uses the H tags, the HTML header tags, to determine the different levels that you can have. And it just so happens that the easiest way to generate this is just to select the headings to include in the table of contents. And we're going to do H2 because one of the things that I noticed when I was looking at this is that there's not a single H1 tag. In fact, if I go here to the search, I find that there's not a single H tag. Here I can get a count for that. There are no matches. But there's a lot of H2 tags. Um, and what we're going to do is split up the file across these, generate the table of contents across these H2 tags. And yeah, I'm going to go and do that now by going to this tool here, the table of contents. To this tool here, the generate table of contents. And I'm going to select up to level 2. When you see that, hey, it's actually not a bad looking table of content. It's sufficient for the purposes of demonstrating this. I'm going to go and say OK, and then you'll see it's going to spend a little time, and then it's going to generate this table of contents. This one is a way for the ebook reader to display something on the content page here, just like this. There's this. We're going to have a table of contents that our ebook reader can display. Now, one of the things that you can do right away is you can just double click into an area and see what it will display. But you'll also, one of the things I noticed is if you click on part 2, you can see that part 2 is in fact got 2 H2 sections next to it. So I'm going to get rid of the part 2 by editing the table of contents. I'm just going to delete this. That means that goes away, and then this file will update itself. Yeah, not in TOC. Let me go find it. Part 2. Yeah, this will update itself. The next thing we're going to do after making the table of contents is we're going to split up this relatively big file. It's 4,950 lines long with what looks like pretty nice indexed. So we don't have to worry about writing an index. That's also beyond the scope of this class. But for us to split up the file, I think it's enough we can just split it on the H2. And if I do a search for all the H2, you can see that this is the very first one, the Italian cookbook. But if I search for the second one, count this, make sure oh, one. Oh, wait, did I? No. Oh, yeah. I just realized um, it's going to look like this. Because I had created the table of contents first, it updated the H2 tag with this section here, the Sigil. Sigil annotation that says this is part of the table of contents. So for my rehearsal, the next rehearsal, I will make sure to split up the file first. In order to split up the file, though, we can use this part of the tool that splits at a particular cursor. When I do this split here, you can see it generates a whole new file with preface here. And if I click back on this file, it's only going to contain, let me close it and open it. It's only going to contain this first part here. In fact, I don't even know. I'm actually curious how this will work without, if I double click on this, oh, the styles got carried over. Okay. So what we're going to do, what I'm going to do next is split up the rest of this file because we saw that there were only these separate sections here. So whenever I search for H2, I'm going to go and split up the file. Now, I can do this laboriously, one at a time, using this split at marker, or I can introduce a marker, which is a shortcut, Control Shift Enter. That introduces a split marker, which you can also do with insert. And once I sprinkle a few of these in the file, I can then split on all those markers all at once. So I'm going to add the rest of this here, these split markers. That's part 2. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm not going to put another split marker there. Well, that would have been fine. And I'm going to go and put another split marker right here. Reach the end. And we have wrapped. We allow ourselves to wrap on the search. I could have toggled that. Maybe for the next rehearsal I'll remember that. But now what we can do is split on all of the markers, which is F6. Now you can see I have all of these different files. And the ePub will load a lot faster, the different pages rather, in your eBook reader. Although I'm actually curious the performance of this because this file itself is actually a very small file. Probably sits in memory. But I'm technical. I think about these kinds of things, but for the ebook that you're using, maybe you're writing a book that's 500 pages, it would behoove you to split the file up at least on chapters. Maybe on a book that large, you may want to split it on sections. Again, just to improve the behavior of your book in an ebook reader. Now, one thing that we can do now that we have it split up like this is we can take the H2 that's here, paste, and we can add a style sheet and manipulate the H2 section. Or here we can actually manipulate it here. So if we go back to this cover, we have all of this here. practical recipes of the Italian cuisine, which is this. Um, and what I'll do is add a new style sheet here, blank one. And I'm going to edit, create a small style for these H3 and H4. I'm going to say for H3, just exactly like what we did before, I'm going to make one text align center. Center. When I create this style here, in order to link it to this file, I will need to use a link style sheets command. By doing this, I can click on this right here, and now this style is linked, and oh, it's actually center. So I'm going to change this to right, just to demonstrate that the style is working. And anywhere that you see an H3 compiled by the art of eating well, that will be set off in a alignment where it's to the right. But there may be other things that you might do, like but margin 20px for 20 pixel margin. That didn't seem to have very much here. But I hope this brief demonstration of a style sheet and how you can link it to an individual page, or you can even do it to multiple. For example, I hope this little demonstration just shows that ability. Here's the style link itself. I hope this shows that you do have the power of really fine control of your book, of your ePub, with styles. I think what I'd like to do now is bring in an image, because what cookbook is out there today without these glorious images? I'm just going to grab an existing file. I have these here, making ebook. It says here images, but I just have this gnocchi. Now there's a recipe here for gnocchi, but you saw that I just put in an image right here. And what I'm going to do is make a, just search for gnocchi in here. Yeah, milk gnocchi. Oh, I'm going to put case insensitive or norm. Let me try normal. Allow it to wrap. Um, I'm going to click on this link, and it'll take me to where it would have it. Yeah, so gnocchi here. I thought there was another reference to this that it could find. Yeah, so here's gnocchi. It's in the first section. Excellent soup. Well, I'm not going to worry too much about the actual correctness of this. So I'm just going to put this picture in here. In order to do that, I'm just going to insert a file. And I'm going to position my cursor right here. The file, it's a little misleading, but the file are only files that are inside of the container, inside of the zip. So in using Sigil, you bring in files and assets into the container, into the zip file, using add, or using add existing into the correct folder, and then to bring it in, you do something like insert file, and it'll present to you the files that are inside of the book. I'm going to add this file here, and when I put that in here, you'll see that it gets brought in right away. It's a big picture, and there are some conventions in ePub. Normally, ePubs leave the pictures on their own separate page, so you'll mark this out. But for our purposes, this is sufficient to demonstrate how you might add a a simple image. Now, the last thing that we'll do is generate a cover for this. To generate a cover, we we do this, add cover. Um, the thing is, we do need to add the cover as part of the ebook container itself, the ePub container. So I first then come to the images. I'm going to add an existing file here, and I already have a picture. And we'll talk about how this got made in a second. But now that I have this cookbook cover in here, I can then make a cover by selecting it and saying OK, and that makes a whole cover page for me. Very simple cover page that will now be part of your ebook. To generate that cover, I'm going to generate that cover. I'll just point everybody to this document. Author of this book, the author of this, Derek Murphy, he is a creative person who spends a lot of time helping people with their own self-published books. And one of these, his was one of the YouTube that I watched when I was making my own ebook cover. What I did was to start with a image, and to find an image, I used Flickr, because in Flickr you can search for an image that allows you to do some very basic. You can do some searches based on whether it allows you to use the image or not. If there's an image out there with all rights reserved, you probably can't use this image. But here, some rights are reserved, and there's you're free to share and adapt. You can remix, etc. But I do have to give credit for this user, and it can't be for a commercial endeavor. This is hardly a commercial endeavor, what we're doing. So you download the image from Flickr, you get a big one, and then in Microsoft Word, again using what Derek has suggested, um, you'll take that image and put it into a single page. Now, Derek has a lot more specific instructions off of his web page here, and his I think it's a 20-minute video, but it's worth reading because I didn't think you could use Microsoft Word like this. What I'll do is I'll make a new um, document here, just show you a little bit behind the scenes of it. I'm going to insert a picture. Well, first, I'm going to modify the layout. I have it here in a comment. I'll set the margins to be 0 in the page layout. Then I'm going to insert this picture from this device, Windows machine. And it's a big picture, but it's of a different format. First, I'm going to do it so that the image is behind the text. Behind the text, I put it right in front. Um, Bring send to back. I think that's what's going to do it. Style. Nope. Yeah, wrap text, and it's going to be behind text. But what we are going to do is we're going to just crank it up. See, you can just copy it, move it around, get a good angle, that kind of thing, make it really pop. And you just grab a text tool. Once I have the simple text box, I'm just going to put the Italian cookbook. It's pop it in right there. I'm going to put you can put no fill, but here it probably works better if there is a fill, and you can even just grab one of these styles that already exists. But the key is that I'm going to edit the size of the font. Um, 48 is probably right, and then put that there. In the original one that I came up with, I made it be over 2 lines. Um, and just pop it right there, something like that. Um, Crank that up a bit, so elongate it. But now that you have this, you can then put it into um, focus. Um, I first have to set it to 100, 100%, and then I do the focus. And then what I do is just take a screenshot of this thing. Take a screenshot, and um, we're not going to actually do that because I've already done that. But when you go to Derek's webpage, what you'll find is there are some specifics for the resolution that you should take your picture in. He suggests some different tools, but that's the key to making a cover. There's a lot more to making a cover, of course, and the other aspect of making a cover is you can always contract out your cover. Just go to a website where freelancers happen to be about, and you can you can find somebody to make a cover for you. Finally, what we're going to add next is the metadata, which is this M. And I'm just going to put here the title. We're going to put here an Italian book, and we're going to add the author one here. Put here Maria Gentile, Gentile, because I think that was, yeah, Maria Gentile, um, compiled by Mrs. Maria Gentile, the Italian Book Company in New York, 1919. There'll be other metadata like that you can put in. I'll put here 1919. Um, and yeah, we've just made an ebook. When I save this file, I can put it into one of my finished books. This is going to be cookbook version 2. And now that we have this, we can now go to this reader and bring in that cookbook. Now, this is one that I made already. This is version 1. I should have maybe labeled it. Maybe that's what I'll do for the next one. But I'm going to add a book, Italian cookbook. And when you open it, there's some blank page here, but that's okay. We can, again, go back and edit that stuff out. But here are the table of contents. Um, this part here, I noticed this the first time inside of the tool. Um, these markings that indicate page 125, page 126. To really refine this book, um, we'd have to get rid of these sections here, uh, and and to do that, you might come in here and let's see, search for PG or something like that, and we would then perhaps remove it, or even remove it based on page num, uh, for example. But I think I think you're getting the the gist of what is involved with. Now it's now what you have to do is refine your book. Because we brought it in as HTML, it brought in also certain layout that was done for this book for HTML that you can choose to get rid of. But now you have a tool that lets you do that, and you and its layout. All right. So the rehearsal time for this was an hour and 10 minutes. I have an hour when I do this. What'll probably go is a lot of the front part. Maybe I won't talk about my book, although if I can find somebody else to buy it, that'd be awesome. Maybe I'll skip over the section, well, Michael Sauer's section. I'm not sure. I do like I like the sharing of that. Maybe the HTML and CSS could be a little quicker. But thank you for checking this out. We're going to rehearse again tomorrow and on until the day I have to do the presentation.